The day's other headlines begin in Washington, D.C., where the Trump administration is taking over management of the city's main rail hub, Union Station. It's the latest effort to put the capital city further under federal control. To be clear, the government already owns the facility, but it had been managed by Amtrak. Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy announced the federal takeover at a launch event for Amtrak's new Acela high-speed train. Duffy called the iconic train station a point of pride for the city that had, quote, fallen into disrepair.
We are going to make the investments to make sure that this station isn't dirty, that we don't have homelessness. We're going to take Union Station back under DOT control. Not a power play, we've always had it, but we think that we can manage the property better.
In a separate event today, D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser said increased federal involvement in the district has helped, particularly to reduce violent crime and auto theft. But she disagreed with some of their methods.
We know having masked ICE agents in the community has not worked, and National Guards from other states has not been an efficient use of those resources.
Meanwhile, federal prosecutors have reportedly failed to indict a man who threw a sandwich at a federal agent in Washington earlier this month. Video of the episode went viral on social media and became a flashpoint in the D.C. federal crackdown. The Associated Press and other outlets are reporting that a grand jury rejected the felony charge against Sean Charles Dunn. It's unclear if prosecutors will plan to try again. The head of the CDC, Susan Menarez, has left the agency just weeks after taking the role. That's according to the Department of Health and Human Services, which oversees the CDC. The longtime government scientist was confirmed by the Senate late last month after President Trump pulled his first pick, that was former Congressman Dave Weldon, over concerns about his views on vaccines and autism. Menarez has been overseeing an agency still reeling from a shooting earlier this month at its Atlanta headquarters that left a police officer dead. Also, the CDC's medical officer and the head of the agency's vaccine unit both resigned today. The FDA approved updated COVID-19 vaccines today for the fall and winter seasons, but with new restrictions. The agency approved jabs from Pfizer, Moderna, and Novavax for those 65 and older. But younger people will need to have at least one underlying medical condition to get a shot, like obesity. And those under 18 can still get vaccinated if a medical provider is consulted. The FDA also said that Pfizer's version of the vaccine will no longer be available for kids under 5. The new rules are a change from prior U.S. policy, which recommended annual COVID shots for all Americans 6 months and older. Kilmar Abrego Garcia says he wants to seek asylum in the U.S. Lawyers for the Salvadoran national told a federal judge today about that request during a hearing into a separate effort to prevent his deportation to Uganda. The 30-year-old was rearrested earlier this week as officials seek to deport him for a second time. He was mistakenly deported to El Salvador earlier this year and then returned to the U.S. in June to face human smuggling charges. Officials have claimed that he's part of the dangerous MS-13 gang. Abrego Garcia denies this and has pleaded not guilty to the charges. Israel said today that the evacuation of Gaza City is inevitable ahead of its planned offensive there. That came as Gaza health officials reported at least 39 deaths today in Israeli attacks. They also said 2 more people died as a result of Israeli strikes on a hospital earlier this week. That death toll now stands at 22, including journalists, first responders, and others. Israel says it's investigating the attack and maintains without evidence that 6 of those killed were militants. In the meantime, at the UN,
it is entirely man-made.
Every Security Council member except the U.S. said today that human actions are to blame for the famine in Gaza and warned that using starvation as a weapon of war is illegal. The acting U.S. ambassador to the UN said the assessment declaring famine isn't legitimate. Denmark summoned the top U.S. diplomat in the country today amid allegations of a covert influence operation by U.S. citizens in Greenland. Mark Stroh arrived at the foreign ministry just hours after Denmark's public broadcaster said that 3 Americans, all with ties to the Trump administration, have been working to whip up opposition to Danish rule in Greenland. The report did not name the Americans. President Trump has said he wants to control the mineral-rich island, which is a semi-autonomous territory of Denmark. Both Greenland and Denmark have said it's not for sale. India is feeling the weight of higher U.S. tariffs that took effect today. President Trump had initially hit India with a 25% baseline tariff rate in July. But this month he added another 25%, citing India's purchasing of Russian crude oil, bringing the total rate to 50%. India's government estimates the tariffs will impact more than $48 billion worth of exports. Analysts say labor-intensive sectors like textiles, leather, and cars will be hit hardest. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi has said he will not give in to U.S. pressure. And on Wall Street today, stocks ended higher ahead of a highly anticipated earnings report from chip maker NVIDIA. The Dow Jones Industrial Average added nearly 150 points. The Nasdaq rose 45 points. The S&P 500 closed at a new all-time high. And today marked the 80th anniversary of the mother of all food fights, the Tomatina Festival in Spain. Thousands descended on a town in Valencia to hurl tomatoes at each other for one raucous and rather messy hour. A total of 120 tons of overripe tomatoes were used. That is roughly the weight of a blue whale. Participants must squash the tomatoes before throwing them to minimize the impact. Even still, people wore goggles and earplugs. Organizers say not to worry about the food waste, as the tomatoes would have been thrown out anyway, but the laundry bill must have been astronomical. Still to come, on the News Hour, Russia and Ukraine attack each other's energy infrastructure, leading to massive power outages. Understanding Cracker Barrel's return to its old logo after massive backlash. And Judy Woodruff explores what the U.S. could learn from Northern Ireland's history of political violence.
This is the PBS NewsHour from the David M. Rubenstein Studio at WETA in Washington, and in the West from the Walter Cronkite School of Journalism at Arizona State University.